We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India NewsNight, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to hold bilateral talks with New Zealand PM Christopher Luxon in New Delhi. Issues of mutual interest, including trade and defence cooperation, to be discussed. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics, the Raisina Dialogue. New Zealand PM Luxon to deliver a keynote address. Ahead of Trump-Putin talks, Russia seeks NATO exclusion in peace treaty, says Ukraine must be neutral, rules out NATO membership for Kyiv. US deports hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members under Alien Enemies Act to El Salvador prison despite court block. Tornadoes and violent storms raked across the central United States, 36 dead and thousands left without power. Indian movies reign supreme at Asian Film Awards. All We Imagine as Light in the Best Film. Shahana Goswami bags Best Actress Award, while Sandhya Suri gets Best New Director Award for Santosh. And on to the details now. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, who arrived in India on Sunday, will hold talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday, covering various aspects of India-New Zealand relations. Prime Minister Modi will host a lunch in honour of the visiting dignitary. The visiting minister is also scheduled to meet President Draupadi Murmu. Luxon will attend the inaugural session of the Raisina Dialogue as the chief guest and deliver the keynote address. Prime Minister Luxon is scheduled to visit Mumbai on 19th March, where he will have interactions with Indian business leaders and representatives from various walks of life. The visit of Prime Minister Luxon underscores the long-standing and enduring ties between India and New Zealand. It reaffirms the continued commitment of both countries to further strengthen the bilateral relationship across all sectors and deepen close people-to-people ties. And before kicking off the events in New Delhi and Mumbai, the visiting New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon shared the pictures of him meeting the Indian community members. On social media platform X, he wrote, and I quote, "The Indian community is the third largest ethnic group in New Zealand. India is our largest source of skilled migrants and our second largest source of international students. In short, Indian Kiwis make a massive contribution to New Zealand, and I'm proud of what this community does for our country. I brought along a senior delegation of community and business leaders here to India, the largest ever group to accompany a New Zealand Prime Minister on a foreign trip. Was great to catch up with them after our arrival and before we kick off our events in Delhi and Mumbai," unquote. And in the spirit of deepening economic cooperation, India and New Zealand have revived long-stalled free trade negotiations. The significant step was marked by a meeting of India's Minister for Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, with his New Zealand counterpart, laying the foundation of a momentous partnership towards strengthening the economic and trade ties between the two countries. The India-New Zealand FTA negotiations aim to achieve balanced outcomes that enhance supply chain integration and improve market access. This milestone reflects a shared vision for a stronger economic partnership, fostering resilience and prosperity. And with bilateral ties between India and New Zealand continuing to grow steadily, aim to unlock new avenues, fostering mutual growth and prosperity. Let's take a look at a special partnership between the two countries. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the Raisina Dialogue, India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics on Monday. The 10th edition of the Raisina Dialogue will be held from 17th to 19th of March in New Delhi. Prime Minister of New Zealand, Christopher Luxon, will join the inaugural session as the chief guest and deliver the keynote address. The 10th Raisina Dialogue will witness participation of representatives from about 125 countries, including ministers, former heads of state and heads of government, military commanders, captains of industry, technology leaders, academics, journalists, among others. Well, over the course, decision makers and thought leaders of the world will engage each other across conversations in various formats over 6 thematic pillars. The theme of the 2025 edition is Kal Chakra, People, Peace and Planet. Over 3,500 participants from about 125 countries will be joining the dialogue in person. And for more, we have Akshay Dongre joining us on this. Well, Akshay, with global leaders gathering in New Delhi for the key geopolitical summit, what all is planned for the 10th edition of the Raisina Dialogue? Akshay, can you hear us? Akshay, am I audible? Akshay, with global leaders gathering in New Delhi for the key geopolitical summit today, what all is planned for the Raisina Dialogue?
Well, this is in fact one of the prime geopolitical events that takes place every year. It's an annual event, and this time around we have the chief guest the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who has arrived in New Delhi, and he will be in fact giving a speech there as well. The keynote address will be by Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. He's also bringing a massive delegation, the largest one that has ever been brought by any New Zealand Prime Minister to India, and we can expect all sort of negotiations, discussions as far as India's geopolitics is concerned, and the geopolitical policies that the country has been formulating in recent years. Especially, we have seen the kind of engagements that even Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had as far as the neighboring countries are concerned, along with the key allies that India has amid the rapidly changing geopolitical scenarios. This year's Raisina Dialogue is going to be extremely important event, giving an insight into India's current stance as far as the ongoing issues are concerned, along with the future of geopolitical situation in Southeast Asia and in the Indian Ocean region as well. Now, the arrival of the New Zealand Prime Minister is also important because we have recently seen that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had gone to Mauritius, and that was also keeping in view the maritime security of the Indian Ocean region, keeping in view the freedom of movement and security of the region from all sort of challenges that the world is facing, and New Zealand also becomes the key partner in India's Indian Ocean region as well as Indo-Pacific region outlook. So far, as far as the maritime security concerns issues are concerned, certainly there are going to be talks among all the key allies as far as the Raisina Dialogue goes for the next few days. Now, also talking about the arrival of the New Zealand Prime Minister, he will be in India for 4 days, starting today. He will also be visiting Mumbai, and this is also going to be an extensive visit by the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who is making his maiden trip to India this time after taking office of the Prime Minister of New Zealand as well.
All right, Akshay, thank you so much for all those details. And moving on, the budget session of Indian Parliament will resume today with both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha set to meet. According to the list of business, the Lok Sabha will reconvene at 11 a.m. IST to take up key legislative matters, including the presentation and discussion of multiple reports from standing committees. Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan will move a motion for the election of 2 members to the Court of University of Delhi. The session will also take up the discussion and voting on the demands for grants under the Ministry of Railways for 2025-26. The second part of the budget session of Parliament will continue till April 4th. Well, the budget session of the Indian Parliament will resume today with both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha set to meet. According to the list of business, the Lok Sabha will reconvene at 11 a.m. IST and it is supposed to take up key legislative matters today, including the presentation and discussion of multiple reports from the standing committees. Also, most importantly, Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan will move a motion for the election of 2 members to the court of the University of Delhi. And for more, we have Anil Thomas joining us in Parliament. Well, Anil, the second leg of the budget session begins today. What are the key priorities for both the houses during this period?
Well, good morning, Lipakshi. Well, very much on expected lines. There's been a long weekend break, especially for the festivities of the color of the Festival of Colors, Holi. And, you know, Parliament, the second half of it resumes after a 4-day break. But having said that, this particular session that begins today, there is going to be the JPC, especially on the One Nation, One Election. That's going to take place. There's a sitting of that. That's not all. Related to Ministry of Railways and also with other ministries, especially when it comes to the budget allocation for Manipur. All these issues will be up for discussion. So it's going to be an interesting day in Parliament. You will see a lot of back and forth by the Treasury benches as well as the opposition, because this is where, you know, we are actually now into the business gear of, you know, the budget session of Parliament. I think there is a lot of deliberations, a lot of discussions that will take place, and it's going to be interesting to watch on what exactly, you know, does the Treasury benches do so that business can be convened and more transactions, especially with deliberations and discussions, can move forward. And, you know, the opposition will also up the ante on various issues that they have been demanding discussion over the week. Can they bring it to the table? Will the chair keep attention to that? Will time be allotted to that? We'll have to wait and watch.
Right, as you mentioned, Anil, with several issues now expected to be raised also by the opposition in the Parliament, what all can be expected out there?
Well, the opposition has been time and again demanding discussions on 2 issues. Firstly, when it comes to the epic issues, the voter ID cards, I think 8 political parties have put together a representation asking for the Speaker to allot some time for discussions. I think that's going to be once again the opposition's biggest push, along with that delimitation that's been where the southern states have all almost zeroed in on, you know, somewhere asking the Treasury benches for some answers. I think these could be the 2 issues that the opposition will be bringing to the table. I think the Treasury benches are well prepared for both the issues. They have said that they will look into the matter, but they have not given any assurances when it comes to time limits being given to them. And I think that's something that is going to be interesting in this particular week of Parliament. Remember, there are 5 days in this particular week where Parliament takes place, and, you know, the Treasury benches will be looking for maximum business, especially with deliberations and discussions to be conducted in this particular session. So it's going to be interesting to watch from the perspective of, you know, especially the fence sitters on how they look at Parliament and which side do they bend. I think that's something that's worth an interest. Also, the discussions that take place on the budget allocation. You know, this is the budget session of Parliament, so there are still discussions on that. Also, another important issue that comes to the table is the discussion on the Ministry of Railways, you know, where various MPs cutting across party lines have stood up and, put their demands. We'll have to wait and watch when the Union Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav stands up to reply. What could be his assurance that he gives to all the demands that have been put? Remember, most of these demands that come, especially from MPs, are for extending either trains that stop at a particular point, extending it further, or trains that go through their constituencies, asking for a stoppage for the trains on the particular stations for more and more people. But it's going to be interesting, the Ministry of Railways discussion that's on in Parliament. That could be interesting to watch for the simple reason, when it comes to people's benefit. I think that's what democracy is all about. People's needs, people's want. MPs know their responsibility well. They know the importance, the people who have elected them, and the role that the MPs have to perform, especially in Parliament. I think the MPs will have their task cut out, especially when it comes to that discussion on the Ministry of Railways that will be up later today.
Right, Anil. Thank you so much for all those details. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov urges US to cease airstrikes against Yemen's Houthis in phone call with Secretary of State Rubio. Netanyahu seeking to dismiss head of Israel's internal security agency amid tensions over security and allegations of media leaks. And stranded US astronauts to return to Earth on Tuesday.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. Lipakshi Khurana moving on in a bold move. The US has deported 238 alleged members of the infamous Venezuelan gang Tren Aragua to El Salvador, where they have been placed in one of the country's most secure prisons. This marks a new chapter in the US crackdown on transnational gangs. DD India's Aarti Rana brings us this report.
On Sunday, a flight carrying 238 members of the infamous Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua landed in El Salvador, where they were immediately taken to a high-security prison. But the deportation isn't just a routine handover. The US government is invoking a law from 1798 known as the Alien Enemies Act, rarely used in modern history, to bypass the courts and deport these gang members with lightning speed. The Trump administration calls it a critical measure to protect national security. President Trump, using the Alien Enemies Act, has justified these actions, labeling the Tren de Aragua gang as an invasion, targeting the US. He argues the group's criminal activities pose an existential threat. The deportations took place despite a US federal judge granting a temporary suspension of the expulsion order. White House denied that the court order was not implemented, saying the plane had already left the United States by the time. Civil rights groups are now sounding the alarm, calling the use of this historic law to justify mass deportation and abuse of the power.
The Alien Enemies Act was enacted in 1798, and it's a wartime authority that can only be used when the United States is in a declared war with another nation or another nation is invading our country. It cannot be used against simply a gang. And notably, it's only been used 3 times in our country's history, all during declared wars: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II.
With legal challenges already in place, the fight over the Alien Enemies Act could redefine the future course of US immigration policy. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele sent the alleged gang members to the country's maximum security terrorism confinement center, which is a mega prison southeast of capital San Salvador with a capacity for 40,000 prisoners. Aarti Rana for DD India.
Well, for more, we have Shubhendu Ghosh joining us on this. Well, Shubhendu, can you give us the details of what all has transpired and also tell us about the Trump administration's use of this Alien Enemies Act in this case, especially considering it hasn't been used in modern times, as civil rights groups are also now raising an alarm?
Good morning, Lipakshi. That's right. The crackdown by the Trump administration against illegal immigrants and criminals in the United States, transnational criminals, continues. Now, what made this episode dramatic was that it was no ordinary deportation. Over 200-year-old war act was invoked. The Aliens Enemies Act was invoked by President Trump to be able to deport over 200 members of the alleged members, I should say, because the criminality has not been proven. The evidence for the criminality has not been given. About over 200 members of this group, which is the Tren de Aragua, which belongs to Venezuela. They've been deported to El Salvador. Now we have to see that the invocation of this law helps Donald Trump bypass the legal process, and that is where the courts also came in. The courts challenged the invocation of the wartime measure. This is not a conflict time. The court had said that about 14 days should be spent to understand the legality of this order, and the plane should be turned around and brought back. But the lawyers informed the Washington district judge that the planes had already taken off, and therefore the matter was not sub judice anymore. So in that sense, legal drama, criminal drama really unfolding, and these prisoners, El Salvador leader has confirmed that these people have been put in the high security prison. In February this year, US and El Salvador had an agreement that American deportees, especially the criminals, could be housed in this high security prison of El Salvador, and the first step towards that has taken place. But the invocation of the wartime measure has led to civil rights, civil liberties groups questioning the move.
All right, Shubhendu, thank you so much for all those details. And moving on, US President Donald Trump said these gang members are very bad people. He made these comments on Air Force One during a late flight back to the Washington area from Florida.
These were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres. That was a bad group. When you look at them and you look at the crimes that they've committed, you take a look. You don't get any tougher, you don't get worse than that. You understand that. So. But you'd have to ask the lawyers. Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals. Murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
And some updates on Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Russia has underscored its demand that Ukraine be excluded from NATO membership and maintain a neutral stance in any prospective peace agreement. Well, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko in a statement emphasized the importance of including stringent security guarantees in peace accord. Grushko detailed that Russia expects these guarantees to ensure Ukraine's neutral status and prevent NATO countries from integrating it into their alliance, seeking robust assurances as part of the diplomatic negotiations. Also, the Deputy Foreign Minister's statements were published by Russian media outlet Izvestia, reflecting Russia's firm position on Ukraine's geopolitical alignment and the broader security dynamics in the region. And US President Donald Trump said he plans to speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. Talking to reporters on board Air Force One, Trump confirmed that he will be speaking to President Putin on Tuesday. He termed the forthcoming talks a good chance to end the three-year-old conflict. Also, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff told a U.S. news agency on Sunday after returning from what he described as a positive meeting with Putin in Moscow. On the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday appointed Major General Andriy Hanatov as Ukraine's chief of the General Staff as Kyiv seeks to speed up army reform. Speaking during his nightly video address, Zelensky said Hanatov would be tasked with making Ukrainian troops more combat ready.
I made personal changes in the armed forces of Ukraine together with Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky and the Ministry of Defense Rustem Umbrov. We decided that the new chief of the General Staff will be Andriy Hanatov, a combat guy. His task is to maximize combat experience of our brigades in planning both defensive and offensive operations, as well as to actively develop the corps system.
досвіду наших.
Zelensky also said he had spoken to Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney and discussed sanctions on Russia and the G7 foreign ministers meeting that took place in the remote tourist town of La Malbaie, Canada on Saturday. And Lithuania on Sunday backed a European Union proposal to pledge up to 40 billion euros in military aid for Ukraine this year, with a similar amount needed in the future to deter Russia-Ukraine conflict. Lithuanian Foreign Minister emphasized that sustaining this funding would help Ukraine maintain its military strength. His comments came ahead of an EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, which will discuss the proposal amid uncertainty over US negotiations with Russia and Washington's future support for Ukraine. Well, despite some cautious EU responses, the foreign minister stressed that Ukraine's military must remain strong regardless of peace talks. Lithuania remains a key ally of Ukraine and a top European defense spender. Also, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called on the United States to halt strikes against Yemen's Houthis during a phone call with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Saturday. During the telephonic conversation, Rubio informed Lavrov of the U.S. decision to launch a military operation against the Houthi forces in Yemen. Lavrov stressed the need for all parties to immediately cease the use of force and engage in political dialogue so as to find a solution that would prevent further bloodshed. Well, the conversation came after U.S. warplanes on Saturday night launched airstrikes on several Houthi sites in Yemen's capital Sana'a and the northern province of Sada. Lavrov and Rubio also discussed specific aspects of implementing the mutual understanding reached at the meeting between senior Russian and U.S. officials in Riyadh on February 18th. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking to dismiss the head of Israel's internal security agency, who swiftly called the move political, said the premier expected personal loyalty. Netanyahu and Shin Bet head Ronen Bar have been engaged in a public spat in recent weeks over reforms to the agency, which has been accused of failing to prevent the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack that triggered conflict in Gaza. While at the same time, the Shin Bet has also been conducting an investigation into some of Netanyahu's aides for allegedly receiving payments from Qatar. Previously, Netanyahu has accused Bar of being behind what he called part of an ongoing campaign of threats and media leaks.
I have had an ongoing lack of trust in the head of Shin Bet, a distrust that has only grown over time. Due to ongoing lack of trust, I have decided to bring a proposal to the government to end the tenure of the head of Shin Bet.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. 59 dead at nightclub fire in North Macedonia. Vatican releases first image of Pope Francis in hospital. Bangladesh remembers Sheikh Mujibur Rahman on his birth anniversary amidst growing controversies over his legacy. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to hold bilateral talks with New Zealand PM Christopher Luxon in New Delhi. Issues of mutual interest, including trade and defence cooperation, to be discussed. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate India's flagship conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics, the Raisina Dialogue. New Zealand Prime Minister Luxon to deliver a keynote address. Ahead of Trump-Putin talks, Russia seeks NATO exclusion in peace treaty, says Ukraine must be neutral, rules out NATO membership for Kyiv. U.S. deports hundreds of alleged Venezuelan gang members under Alien Enemies Act to El Salvador prison despite court block. And Indian movies reign supreme at Asian Film Awards. All We Imagine As Light as the best film. Shahana Goswami bags Best Actress Award, while Sandhya Suri gets Best News Director Award for Santosh. And moving on, North Macedonia has declared a 7-day period of mourning after a fire in a nightclub left at least 59 dead and scores injured. Authorities have detained 15 people for questioning, and the Interior Minister said a preliminary inspection revealed the club was operating without a proper license. Here's a report.
A devastating fire broke out in a nightclub in North Macedonia's Koshania earlier on Sunday, killing 59 people and injuring more than 100. The fire broke out at the early hours of Sunday during a concert attended by some 1,500 people at a nightclub in Koshania. The fire was triggered by fireworks set off on the stage. Most of the victims were between the age group of 14 to 27 and suffered injuries from the stampede that occurred in the panic while trying to exit. Officials say about 148 people were hospitalized in the capital Skopje, Kosanie and in surrounding towns, as well as being taken to neighboring countries for treatment. 70 patients had burns and carbon monoxide poisoning.
We treated about 70 patients here. Unfortunately, there were also deceased persons. The patients had burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. We gave them oxygen and examined them and treated their injuries.
Angry relatives waited outside the hospital for news of the victims of the fire.
After this tragedy, what do I need this life for? I don't need it. I had one child and I lost him. What do I need this life for anymore?
North Macedonia's Prime Minister, Hristijan Mikowski, said an investigation into the nightclub fire had found the club's license was not legitimate.
We have information that at the time of the disaster, the nightclub had a falsified license issued in March 2024 for a bribe. The document was issued illegally with the legal stamp of the economy minister and signed by the then officials of the same ministry. There are many questions there that the investigation should answer.
Interior Minister Pashe Toskowski said the organizers of the event and the owners of the venue had been arrested. More than 20 people were under investigation, 15 of whom were in police custody. The leaders of countries bordering North Macedonia, as well as European Union, offered condolences and support to the Balkan state. Anamika Pandey's report for DD India.
And moving on, a severe weather system struck the U.S. over the weekend, claiming at least 37 lives due to tornadoes, strong winds and dust storms. President Trump confirmed the National Guard's deployment to Arkansas and offered support to local authorities. More in this report. An intense weather system hit parts of United States over the weekend, bringing violent tornadoes, high winds and dust storms, leaving at least 37 people dead. The storm lasted from Friday to Sunday. The National Weather Service reported that tornado watches remained in effect for parts of the Carolinas, eastern Georgia and northern Florida, with the possibility of more tornadoes still on the horizon. President Donald Trump said he was monitoring the tornadoes and storms and announced the National Guard had been deployed to Arkansas and pledged help to state and local officials. In Alabama, at least 3 people were killed by multiple tornadoes, and a recreation center sheltering over 200 people in Troy was heavily damaged. Missouri also experienced deadly twisters, claiming at least a dozen lives. The storm killed 6 people in Mississippi and caused significant damage in Arkansas. The storm fueled wildfires in Oklahoma, where over 130 fires were reported, killing 2 people and damaging nearly 300 homes. Texas saw deadly dust storms with 8 deaths in a Kansas highway pileup and 3 more in Amarillo car crashes. As authorities continue to sift through the wreckage, the risk of further tornadoes, wildfires and dust storms remains high, with emergency teams aiding the affected areas. Residents are urged to stay vigilant as conditions may worsen. Kajal's report for DD India. And two ski mountaineers are in critical condition after being struck by an avalanche on Sunday near Fort Ciroggio in the Italian Dolomites. The avalanche, which occurred in the afternoon, involved 3 skiers. A 4th skier, unharmed, raised the alarm. A 51-year-old man was quickly freed from the snow and treated for hypothermia and an ankle injury. 2 skiers were swept further downhill in the avalanche, including a 38-year-old man who was found under 2 meters of snow and a 40-year-old woman buried over 3 meters deep, located by a search dog. Both were airlifted to hospital in a critical condition. And Greece is also riding in a weather roller coaster, with weekend temperatures spiking to a record high for March, just ahead of a forecast bout of snow and frost. The Athens National Observatory reported record high March temperatures in Greece, with 33.7 degrees centigrade in Lassithi, Crete on Sunday and 31.4 degrees centigrade in Livadia, central Greece on Saturday. Other regions also experienced unusually warm temperatures for late winters. A nationwide ban on burning materials in rural areas is in place until March 18th due to wildfires. The heat spike is linked to Saharan dust, and forecasters predict a significant drop in temperatures starting Tuesday. Greece has become a climate change hotspot, having recorded its hottest summer and warmest winter in 2024. Well, part of Cuba's capital, Havana, saw power briefly restored, though much of the city and the country remained without electricity on Sunday after a nationwide grid collapse that affected 10 million people. Havana's electric company reported that about 19% of its customers had regained power but did not provide a timeline for full restoration. Cuba's energy ministry confirmed that it had restarted the Fulton power plant, a key facility for restoring power in the eastern provinces. While some businesses in Havana relied on generators, others returned to normal as power was restored. The grid failure occurred on the evening of March 14th after a transmission line at a substation in Havana shorted, triggering a complete shutdown of the island's power generation. And Thames Water, Britain's biggest water supplier, will find out from a court this week whether a $3.88 billion debt lifeline can proceed as its battle to avoid a state rescue continues. The company is at the centre of a public backlash against the UK water industry. Mismanagement of Thames Water is blamed for sewage pollution in rivers and for an £18 billion debt pile which has left it on the brink of financial collapse. Well, it secured court approval for the new £3 billion loan in February, giving it 2 years to get its finances back in order. But there were appeals from a group of junior creditors and public interest group. The Court of Appeal will announce its decision this week following a 3-day hearing on March 11 to 13th. The new debt underpins its finances until May 2026, by which time it needs to restructure its debt and raise new equity. Meanwhile, it is also trying to win the right to charge its customers higher prices for the coming 5 years through a competition appeal. And a German court resumed a landmark climate case on Monday brought by Peruvian farmer Sol Luciano Luia, who claimed that emissions from German energy giant RWE have contributed to the melting of Andean glaciers, increasing flood risk to his home. Liuya, backed by the group German Watch, seeks €21,000 from RWE towards a $3.5 million flood defense project. He argues RWE's emissions account for nearly 0.5% of global man-made emissions since the Industrial Revolution and should cover a proportional share of climate adaptation cost. Well, this case could set a significant precedent for holding companies accountable for past emissions. Legal experts are closely watching the case's potential to influence future climate litigation and corporate responsibility for global warming. And moving on, a pair of U.S. astronauts struck for more than 9 months on the International Space Station will be returning to Earth on Tuesday evening. Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams are to be transported home with another American astronaut and a Russian cosmonaut aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon craft, which arrived at the ISS early on Sunday. The stranded duo have been on the ISS since June after the Boeing Starliner spacecraft they were testing on its maiden crewed voyage suffered propulsion issues and was deemed unfit to fly them back to Earth. NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov will also return on the Dragon capsule, with the journey to be broadcast live from Monday evening when hatch closure preparations begin. For Wilmore and Williams, it will mark the end of an ordeal that has seen them stuck for 9 months after what was meant to have been a days-long round trip. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration on Sunday began mass layoffs at Voice of America and other U.S.-funded media outlets, signaling a move to cut services critical to U.S. influence globally. Contractors who make up a significant portion of VOA staff were informed via email that their contracts would end at the end of March, with immediate cessation of work and access to agency systems. Many contractors, often non-U.S. citizens, rely on these jobs for visa status. While full-time staff remain on administrative leave, some VOA services have been forced to air music due to a lack of new programming. VOA, established during World War II, has long been a vital source of information in countries with limited media freedom. And moving on, the government of Nepal will host the Sagarmatha Dialogue for the first time, focusing on climate change and its impact. The event, scheduled for May 20th, 21st, will feature discussions on 16 climate-related themes, including climate-induced disasters. Around 450 participants, including heads of state, ministers, scientists, experts and media, are expected to attend. Nepal also aims to draw global attention to climate justice through these discussions, with a focus on the effects of climate change from mountains to coastal areas. The dialogue will also explore how climate change preparedness can be integrated into national policies. Well, Nepal has invited leaders from neighboring countries, including India and China, as special guests. A steering committee led by Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and a management committee led by Foreign Minister Dr. Arzu Rana Deoba and co-chaired by Minister for Forest and Environment have been formed to organize the event. Even earlier, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli had announced that the organization of the Sagarmatha Sambandh in Kathmandu would coincide with International Year of Glaciers 2025. Well, 17th March marks the birth anniversary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of nation of Bangladesh. He's remembered in India too with great admiration and for his relentless struggle for independence and his vision of a secular, sovereign Bangladesh. But while the nation should be celebrating his legacy, recent events tell a different story. Let's watch this report by correspondent Akhilesh Suman.
These are the visuals of desecration of the statue of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in the garb of a mass movement in 2023. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman did not deserve this. The museum of the man who gave Bangladesh its freedom is also demolished. The nation that should have honored him for generations is witnessing attempts to push his memories and legacy into oblivion.
Today you are seeing the erasure of certain amount of history and a certain amount of revenge being taken on Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and primarily because in the country today, that is Bangladesh today, power has shifted into the hands of the Islamic radicals.
Born on March 17, 1920, Mujib was the son of a middle-class family. He pursued law and political science at the universities of Calcutta and Dhaka. He actively participated in the freedom struggle against the Bangladesh and was briefly jailed as a teenager. In 1949, he co-founded the Awami League, which became the voice of East Pakistan's demand for autonomy. As a result of his consistent struggle against oppression of East Pakistani people by the Pakistani army in 1970, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman led the Awami League to victory in Pakistan's first general election, but the military junta refused to transfer power. On March 7, 1971, he delivered a speech giving call of independence for East Pakistan and was arrested by Pakistan Army on March 25 for treason. The Pakistan Army also launched Operation Searchlight, unleashing a brutal genocide against Bengalis. This triggered mass protests. shaking the foundations of Pakistan's ruling elite. Mujib was taken to West Pakistan jail in an effort to silence the movement, but his leadership remained central. With the support of India, the people of Bangladesh fought for their liberation, leading to the creation of an independent republic in December 1971. As part of a diplomatic accord with India, Pakistan was forced to release Sheikh Mujib in January 1972. His return to Dhaka was met with euphoric celebrations, and he was sworn in as the first Prime Minister of Bangladesh.
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman basically represents the cultural construct or cultural spirit of Bangladesh, which is based on Bengali nationalism. And basically, they are proud of being a Bengali culturally, bilinguistically. And Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, while he was giving leadership to the Bengali people against the Pakistani Islamist construct, he has become a real icon, or you can say he has become the voice of the Bengali people.
Despite his immense popularity, Mujib faced mounting economic and political challenges, exacerbated by sabotage efforts from pro-Pakistani forces. In January 1975, he assumed the presidency, consolidating power to address instability. However, his dream of a progressive Bangladesh was cut short by his assassination, along with most of his family, on August 15, 1975, by Bangladesh army renegades.
Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was an inspiration not just for Bangladesh, but for the people of entire developing nations, where people were struggling against tyrannical rules. People of Bangladesh and people of entire global south should revere the remembrance of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India in New Delhi.
Well, the Vatican on Sunday released the first image of Pope Francis in hospital since the 88-year-old pontiff began treatment for double pneumonia. The Pope was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on February 14th with a severe respiratory infection that has required evolving treatment. He has not been seen in public since. The Vatican said the Pope had celebrated Mass with other priests in the chapel on Sunday. The Pope had been receiving oxygen throughout his treatment in the hospital. And in a heartfelt display, tango dancers performed outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital on Sunday to honor Pope Francis, who is recovering from pneumonia treatment. Led by Diana Gasparo, the event celebrated the pontiff's love for tango and his Argentine roots. Accordion melodies filled the air as dancers adorned with red roses turned the square into a space of rhythm and prayer. For attendees, this tribute was both spiritual and symbolic, a gesture of gratitude and support. And the 18th Asian Film Awards held on March 16 celebrated the brilliance of Indian cinema. Pal Kabadia's All We Imagine As Light clinched the prestigious Best Film Award, while Shahana Goswami's powerful performance in Santosh earned her the Best Actress accolade, marking a triumph of movement for Indian talent. Directed by Sandhya Suri, Santosh also secured the Best New Director award, showcasing India's storytelling prowess. Well, held in Hong Kong, the award spotlighted 30 films from 25 countries with Indian entries standing tall. The event, established by the Busan, Hong Kong and Tokyo Film Festivals, continues to honor Asian cinematic excellence and foster regional collaboration. Well, you're watching DD India News. Our time now for some sports news. Indian batter Karun Nair is back with the Delhi Capitals for the IPL season. Karun, who made his ODI debut in 2016 and was later picked for the Test squad, etched his name in history with a triple century in just his third Test. But after that, he faded from the national scene. Now, with a solid domestic run behind him, the IPL presents a golden opportunity. Not just for Karun to make a statement, but also for Delhi, who signed him at a bargain. A strong season could even put him back on the national selectors' radar. Our correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya caught up with Karun Nair to discuss Delhi's prospects and his own road to redemption.
Johnny May is Karun Nair, a star player for IPL, playing for Delhi Capitals. So, Delhi Capital has seen ups and downs in its fortune. Do you believe that it's time for them to rectify that anomaly of not winning the tournament?
I think we've put together a great squad this time around, and really exciting players in our setup this time. And again, it's about starting off well and keeping that momentum going throughout the tournament. And every team's wish is to win the IPL, and we have 10 teams fighting for it. It's about us trying to play our own way and play to our potential, and hopefully we can have the title this year.
Akshar Patel will be the new captain this time. A lot of things change here. You're a senior player. How do you see using your experience and taking the team forward?
I think Akshar is going to be a great captain. A lot of things have changed, but it's new for me as well. And I've come here after quite a few seasons, so really happy to be back with Delhi Capitals, and excited to get this season going. And in whatever way I can, I'll try to contribute to the team's success in whichever position or role that I've been given, and give my 100%.
How do you see yourself in terms of fitting in the management or fitting in as a senior player? Because you have played international cricket, you have a lot of experience playing in these conditions.
Yeah, obviously the feedback and my thoughts and my opinions will always be there if it's needed. And my focus is on preparing well for whichever role that I've given, and staying ready to when the opportunity comes, and trying to keep it as simple as that.
Any idea about you believe that this will be a major opportunity for you to stake your claim once again for the international team?
I think every game is an opportunity. I'm not looking at it as a different as different mindset or anything. Just looking at it as how I've played the whole season this year. Every game is important and every opportunity is important.
Every game is important and every opportunity is important for Karun Rai, who's all set to represent Delhi Capitals in this season of IPL. Welcome, this is Tapush Bhattacharya for TD India from Delhi.
Well, Kolkata Knight Riders has named seamer Chetan Sakaria as a replacement for speedster Umran Malik for the upcoming edition of the Indian Premier League 2025. Sakaria represented India in 1 ODI and 2 T20 internationals and has played 19 IPL games in which he bagged 20 wickets. Sakaria has now joined the Kolkata Knight Riders squad in the absence of Umran Malik, who has been ruled out of the season due to an injury. The KKR team is set to kick off their campaign against Royal Challengers Bangalore on March 22nd. At the iconic Eden Gardens. An Australian teenager, Gout, showcased his remarkable sprinting skills by running 200 metres in a wind-assisted 19.98 seconds at the Queensland State Championship on Sunday. The breeze of 3.6 metres per second means that his triumph will not be entered into the record books. However, his 20.05 time in the heats was the fastest in the world this year. Gout's running style have already earned comparisons with Jamaican sprinting legend Usain Bolt. He has stated his ambition to become the first Australian to break the 20-second barrier in the 200 metres. Gout's next chance to do that will be in Melbourne at the Moree plant meet on March 29th. And all right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. Well, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Kurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.